In this video we'll be discussing the red lines with a DBS and red lines with a new kid. Now when it comes to the DBS and the new kid, you have to have a box, and that box defines your trading range. So first of all I'll show you what it looks like in the model so as you understand this. So you'll understand that the fib levels here, when we have a red line, and if price is here, your eye will be attracted to the fact that the 1128 is very close to this pivot. However, you gotta pay attention to the further out fib level if your red line is pointing in that sort of direction. So you got to pay attention to the 127 here, and this one we call the new kid, and it's when you get a box with a red line using 127 and then 1128. So you can see here that this box is the low of the box is drawn off the 127, the high of the box is the 1128 off this fib pool, right? So one's used off the fib pool from P1 to P2, and the second one is the fib pool from P2 to P3, projecting P3. This is called the new kid. We call this one the inverse new kid. Why? Because you can see in this case, this 1128 did hit there, right? So understand that the last line in the sand is the 1127 level. Okay, I think I need to explain this on this chart because this could be a good lesson. So what I'll do, I'll just paste it in one of these. So on this here, you pull your fib tool from here to here. Now, what can you see? You can see that above the 1128 we have the 1.27. Okay, that's a good level to have, like this. And in this situation you could be fooled into drawing a huge box, right? So this will be the 127 line. You could be fooled into drawing a huge box here. However, all you need to do is be aware that there is a 127 here. It's always the last one is the 1127, and you would pull from here to there, giving you that 127 here. And then what you do is you just draw a box from the low of your box is there, your high of your box is there, and then this becomes what? Your trading zone. Okay, that's it. What do we call this? This here would be called a 127 DBS. If you drew it like this, it would be called an inverse new kid. Why inverse? Because it's 1128 followed by 1127. And this is what happens in real time, because as you see price unfold, often I'll have two boxes as possible areas because you don't know where price is going to turn. You got an approximate idea. Sometimes you'll have two boxes overlapping where prices return, and one of them will be a new kid and one of them will be a DBS. So I think this is a great model to appreciate what that from. So let's look at some examples. So here we have a new kid. Can you see why we call this a new kid? The 127 is the last line in the sand for a fib here. It hit the line, hit the price, pretty much spot on. Price projected then down here to give us the 1128, and that is the parameters to draw the trading zone box. So then we look for entries. Now you're always going to have choices for entries. You've got what I call a left side entry, which is as soon as price comes down, you might have a limit order sitting right on that line, and you put a stop under here. That is an option. You might, and if you want to take a right side entry, which would be anything to the right of this pivot. So very often on something like this, I would get on here, or indeed I'd get on a TD pullback with a stop just under the TD box. You can see you would have taken a stop here. Also, you got to understand that this from here to here, you've got an 886 box, which is also, what is this? This is, we call this a test. It's called a test of the C line. Remember, this is A, this is B, this is C. So this is a test. You'd be getting long on a test. Now, what's a good reason to get long there? Number one, it's a test. Number two, it's an 886. Number three, it's a new kid setup, right? Pretty cool, huh? And then what's the next thing you look for? You look for decent risk reward. Me personally, I want at least 7RT here, at least. I'm not going to bother with a trade anything less than that. Do you think that was achieved? How would you trade this? Well, you get long there on the line, and you put your stop a tick underneath here. It looks like it's maybe a 13, 14-hour trade. That's that one. Let's do another one. This one here, what's this? What would you call this? It's a 128 DBS. Okay, it is. I like to make these lines red, but sometimes I forget. But you can see why, right? There's the 1128 calling the lower side of the box, and then this is the 1128 calling the high of the box. Price came into it, so basically you can pretty much short it right there if you want, or short it here and put a stop either halfway in this wick or at the high. Often I'll go halfway in a wick like that because that's quite a large wick, and very often price won't come halfway in it. Again, you have to figure out if it's worth it down to here, right? That'll determine whether you would take that. So look at a few more here so as you really do understand this. So this here, what's this? Right, I've thrown this one in because you're going to come across this, right? You'll look at this and think, is this a 127 sequential? I would say no. But what I really like about this is that the red line that touches the geometry is very nice. So the geometry gets a big tick here, right? It's like, yes, we have very nice geometry. The fibs don't quite correspond to the extremes of P2 and P3. P3 it does, right? So what would you do? What are your options here? Well, you can still draw your fork from A, B, and C. And in order to have some confidence in the trade, you don't know if price is just going to zoom straight through here. However, you do have a fork, so you can take a right side entry, which is you asking a little bit more of price in order for it to show its hand. What does that mean? That means that when price comes up here and comes down here, again, there's various ways of doing it. This is a test. You'd get on a test. Normally on here, you can put a stop under here and you target the median line. However, on this situation here, I'll often look for what I call a swap. So you can see red, 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 and don't know if that one there, let's have a closer look. Yep, that's red. So then your first green is here, so you get long here and you put a stop underneath here. That would be a very good risk reward trade up to here. So do you see what I mean? I mean, you need to use your intelligence a little bit, right? And figure these things out, whether it's logical. This is not a green light, red light indicator system, right? You need to weigh up a few things and understand what options are available to you and make a decision, right? So that's that one. There's a couple more, 3 more actually. So this one here, we call it an inverse new kid. Why is it an inverse? Because it's a 128 followed by a 127. Actually, this one here is one we can check because it might be what we just looked at before. So here to here would be your first fib pull, and we do have a 127 down here. See, this is exactly it. Here's a good one. Yeah, I like it. I like it. This is one where you're going to have a line here. And you can see that it's exactly this, pretty much is a tick above, right? So this would be a situation where you'd have 2 boxes, 2 zones drawn out actually. That's what you'd have. 2 zones drawn out here. This one here will be a 127 DBS, and this bigger green box will be your inverse NewKid. So you'll have two boxes, and you'll be watching price as it came down, and that's great. I'm delighted that I'm delighted that this has come up, because every one of them is not squeaky clean. Okay. However, on something like this, I would suggest that you wouldn't go long on here. You might go long here. You might go long on that one. Why? Because prices hit the red line, and you do actually have somewhere to put a stop, which would be under there. Normally I would put a tick under there, so that for sure, for me anyway, I would be stopped out. Other people would like to cover this whole box, because you know that 127 is the most it's going to go to. And again, you need to work out your risk reward to your first target. Something like this, a right side entry after you see green makes sense. Which this is this? Don't know what time frame this is, but I'd be looking even in a smaller frame, 15-second chart, see if I can get in here, right? Because that looks a bit too big to me. That's not many are to the median line, so not really interested in that. Okay, so that's great that this came up, because you are going to see you're going to have these things to contend with as you're mapping your markets. This one here, what is this? This is a 128 DBS. Okay, 128 DBS. And look at the logic here. So price came off. You probably wouldn't have got on that unless you were on a very small frame. So you wait for it to come back. And what is this? This is as good enough as a test of the fork that you can get. So you could go along there, right there, and put a stop under here. Now that looks like it could be decent R to here. Okay. If you miss that, you see, if you miss that and you go along here, there's not. It's going to be rubbish risk reward. You're going to get 3 or 4 R out of that. It's not. Well, I mean, you can take them, right? But for me, I'm not interested in that. And I've got one more chart here. So here we've got a thing called the TZ, which is trading zone, and the high of the box is a 127, and the low of the box is a 128. So that there is a NewKid. Right, it's a NewKid, and you can see that the geometry is not great, but we do have a very nice box. So once again, this one here, if you did get on there, take your money here. That's it, right? Really, take your money there. When price comes back, you see what it is. You're not going to go long here, which is a test of the median line. It is a test, but you're not going to go long there because price has already hit its target. Okay, so you either get on here or that's it. And you can see here, this is a TD pullback, right? TD pullback. I suppose you could have gone there, but you know, I'd be going down a very small frame to see if I can get a decent risk reward. Okay, so hopefully that's clear. We covered the DBS, we covered the NewKid, and we had a few ones that we had to scratch our head a little bit on, and that's trading, right? You need to make a decision, and based on these factors. But I'm sure you're beginning to appreciate that we don't need many of these to come in to make very good R. Okay. Lesson 4 will be about identifying major and minor reaction legs for pivot and fib pool levels. This is something that needs to be clearly understood.